Okay, I'm back, and let's see if if anybody comes back. It's the last attempt was a failure because we had I have terrible internet connection right now, and I've had a problem actually for a couple of days, and I probably should have stayed over in Ironwood to use my use my personal internet over there out of my apartment. But this is what we've got. So hopefully y'all will come back in here in just a couple of minutes, and we'll continue our conversation. And this is the beauty of doing live events. And sometimes technology is going to take its toll on us. So hopefully, if and for those of you that are just starting to tune back in, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or let me know what you're hearing, seeing if I changed internet service, and let's see if. Oh, okay, good. Addie says, "Hey, okay, great. I'm glad we got that resolved." So, and it's funny because I switched over to using my phone as my personal hotspot, and normally the RV park is just fine. So, so hopefully we'll be able to continue, and without further ado. So anyway, um, so back to the topic. Sometimes we get an impression about somebody, and we fall in love with that impression, and it's not necessarily the impression that describes the person we fall in love with adequately or accurately. And I'll give you an example from a recent situation that I've been able to analyze myself, and that is that I came to recognize that this person continually looks backward, as opposing to looking forward into the future. It's a situation where she continually looks back at what could have been had she made different decisions, had she kept going with certain plans she had, rather than admitting, well, she made some choices in the past, and this is where she is right now. So it's difficult to live with, or to be with someone that continually looks into the past. They live with that, with those thoughts. They picture what should have been or what could have been, rather than what is. And rather than dealing with what is, they dwell on those things from the past, and it there's only so much that you can do before it starts holding you back. And the important point is to always be moving forward. You can't live in the past. It's not going to do you any good. All you're doing is dragging baggage from the past, from past relationships, past events, whatever it is, into the future with you, and it doesn't allow you to move forward. It doesn't allow you to have good, healthy relationships, either romantically or personally or professionally. Don't misunderstand me. They can disguise it very well for a while, and but until you step back and take a look at it, living in the past is problematic. So, um, there's the other aspect of seeing potential in somebody. When you see the potential, that my ex-wife had great potential to take on so much more of a workload than she actually did. And I'm not saying that she didn't work much. She worked hard, but there were aspects of my business back in that time of my life that she could have been a much greater help to me in my business. But she chose that chose not to. She didn't feel confident. She didn't feel comfortable for whatever reason. It doesn't make any difference. It's you choose. Certain people just choose not to advance. They choose not to get better, and it's very difficult to try to develop a relationship with someone unless you want them to, unless you're willing to just stay stuck with them. And ideally, we should all be moving forward. We should all be growing. I think that's one of the keys to life, is always be learning, always be growing, always becoming a better person. And the only way you do that is by learning and growing. So it was an epiphany for me this weekend on letting, and it was a further letting go of my past, and making it easier for me to move forward. Because as we end relationships, there's always that hurt, that heartbreak, that heartache. Even if you're the one that does the breaking up or the moving on, there's still a part of you that you leave behind. And that's not always easy. It's never easy letting go. With some people it's easier than others, if you haven't been together too long. But when you develop a relationship and develop a connection with somebody, it's often very difficult, even if you're the one saying goodbye. And then you can sit back and say, did I give this enough time? Did I do the right thing? And you start second guessing yourself, and you left for a reason. So you have to capture that reason in your mind and in your brain, and remember that. That's why you left. That's why it isn't going to work. And those are the thoughts, those are the feelings that you need to hang on to. Yes, it's nice to remember the fun times you may have had, the good times that you may have had, and look back fondly. But especially in the beginning, you have to focus on the differences that are separating you, that are breaking you apart. So, any comments on that? Are we still broadcasting okay? So, it's a lesson, and some of us have to learn it more than once. But sometimes you don't know. Addie says, it was a bit different in my situation. The man was extremely smart, but he had a brain injury when he was 21, and his mentality appeared to be at 21. He thought he had more time than he did to grow up. And she says, I couldn't do it anymore. I understand. And, sometimes there are physical limitations or that cause problems that we're not equipped to deal with, or that you may not personally choose to live with. To live with, for lack of better terms, with an eternal teenager, that can be, that can be extremely challenging, because we tend to grow up. Hey, Terry, thanks for joining in. Glad you can hear me. And Paul asks, how long would you wait if their stuff is a concern? I would have a conversation with them about it. If you've had the conversation already, or one or more conversations with them already, and nothing seems to change, I would recommend counseling to help them move forward. But beyond that, I wouldn't hang around too long, because all you're doing is if it's a concern now, it's only going to become more of a concern later on, and odds are it's going to become an irritant, Paul. And there's only so many times you want to hear the same story about how, how they didn't expect to be single at 60 years old, or how they would have been much farther along had they stayed in a different career, or, whatever it is. And only you can decide how long to stay, but I'm not one to stick around too long if there's, and I don't necessarily want to call it complaining as much as being stuck in the past. And when they get stuck on that, it's when you get stuck on anything in the past, it is so hard to move forward. It is so hard to make good decisions personally, for them to make good decisions, and it almost becomes a process of overthinking everything. Hey, Terry. And Terry says, I forgot what the discussion. The discussion is about falling in love with someone, that falling in love with a person based on who you thought they could be as opposed to who they actually are. And Addie says, don't wait 9 years like I did. Hey, Phil, thanks for joining in. Hey, there you go. I'm glad. I lost, I lost a lot of you. Doing live, every once in a while, we're going to have technical issues, and I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and waiting, and it's just one of those. It's just one of those things, and we got to roll with it. I'm just glad that I was able, that I had the option to change Wi-Fi services and continue to go. So anyway, but that's, Terry, it's a lot of what we'll find, and I shared. Hopefully, you were on the line when I shared a recent conversation that I had with an ex-girlfriend, and just discovering in that conversation how much I was in love with the person I thought she could be, as opposed to who she is, who she actually is. And the more the more time we spent together, the more things these became obvious. And in a recent conversation, it was just like a blaring horn, or just the bright lights in the eyes. It woke me up. So we're all going to have those situations, and it's not the first time that it's happened to me. Because people can portray themselves as or we can interpret, and I want to put it that way. I don't want to make it sound like anybody that I've dated has misrepresented themselves, or tried to convince me that they were something that they were not. It's just, I saw her in a different way than she saw herself. And so we can do that very easily. And Terry says, oh, I could have done that. I realized he was more emotionally unavailable, so I just stayed friends. There you go. And that's what it's all about, is being able to recognize those things. And sometimes they don't, I'll use my experience as an example. Sometimes those things don't present themselves because the conversation up front is so normal, so it just feels right. Everything falls into place. But as you move into that relationship, you start to recognize the same conversations start coming up again and again. And these were conversations, in my case, about things in the past. And as I said earlier, you can't change the past. You made decisions back then. You didn't stay in the career path you wanted. You ended up getting divorced through, a lot, for all intents and purposes, no fault of your own. And this is the situation I was dealing with. so there's any number of things that can trigger those thoughts of the past. Hey Nancy, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. So we have to pay attention to those things. We have to pay attention to those conversations. If you're having the same conversation week after week after week, you got to start thinking, hey, you got to have a conversation with her saying, hey, or him saying, when are we done with this conversation? We've had this conversation, for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. I understand it's not your ideal situation. Things happened in the past. When is it time to move on? And Terry says, doing online and talking with someone, you have a tendency to see them as something you conjure up and meet with disappointment. Absolutely. And I think that is that's a great example of what I'm talking about. You fall in love with somebody that or with their persona as opposed to who they actually are. And with online dating, that is so easy to do. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to the conversations, to their actions, and are they walking their talk? They may talk a good story, but are they walking their talk and following it up, or is it just hey Nancy, what are those conversations like? So it's very easy to have those things slip by until they become an annoyance. And the whole point of this conversation is not to let those things become an annoyance. Address them up front and see if there's actually there can be some resolution to living in the past, or is it something that they're always going to do, or there's something they're not going to let go of? And it could be, and some of it can be anger. They may not be letting go of anger that for situations in the past, and that can create huge problems. And we talk about that in the first module of Dating Made Simple Academy, that you have to get your head mentally into the game, into the dating game. You have to be mentally and emotionally healthy. And when you're hanging on to the past, when you're hanging on to negative emotions, it's just devastating to all your potential relationships, unless, of course, you're dating somebody that's equally negative, and then you can commiserate. But then, what kind of a relationship is that? A relationship based on negativity. I can't imagine living that way. You each fuel each other's fuel each other's pain, and that's not a healthy relationship either. So it's. These are all signs. These are all things that you need to pay attention to as you date, and sometimes these things don't appear for a little while. Things may be going along, and then all of a sudden something is said or done, and it triggers a thought, and it brings out the volcano of negativity, I guess. And Terry says, I can't be around a negative person. Oh, I so agree, Terry. It's so hard. It's negative people suck the life out of me. It's too hard for me to deal with. I can, and I do have to deal with some negativity along through the day, when I'm coaching people, because some people come to me with a very, very negative attitude. So my first course there is my first action there is to try to move them away from the negativity in whatever way I need to to help them move forward, to help them recognize that they can't stay stuck. If they stay stuck there, they're always going to be unhappy. They're never going to find that truly extraordinary relationship and be able to move forward. And and more I see that is the very beginning of dating. You've got to be over your past relationships. You've got to be over the hurt. You can't. We're all going to talk about our past relationships, because those things are going to come up in the normal conversations of dating. We want to know why our potential partner or potential mate got divorced, or what happened to them that put them in a position of being a widow. Was it a car accident? Was it a disease? Whatever. Was the divorce caused by an affair? Did they cheat? Did they, whatever it was. We want to find out to see where they are mentally now and emotionally, and make sure that they're okay to move forward. And a lot of times in those conversations, you can start to sense hostility popping up, and then that would be another good conversation or topic for conversation. Say, hey, I see you're getting agitated. Is this something that happens regularly when you talk about your ex, or did we just touch on a subject that is extremely sensitive to you today? And we all have days where certain things are just going to tick us off that in a normal day it's just not so much. And Paul says, do you tell them to take up dancing? Well, that could be one thing, Paul. And that's a good form of exercise. Anytime you start exercising, you start moving, the endorphins start kicking in, and it tends to lead to a better mood. Beyond that, it's that in and of itself, just exercise, getting out and breathing deep, taking a walking for a couple of miles, and just moving, it just the whole biological or physiological change in your body can get rid of a lot of stress, a lot of anger, and it can tend to change your whole thought process, because you stop thinking about the things that were ticking you off, and you start enjoying, oh, look at it, it's so nice out, look at the trees, look at the birds, look at the squirrels, whatever's attracting your attention or distracting you at the moment. And Phil says, we have to heal the hurts to help the relationship. Absolutely. And it's so much better, Phil, to be able to heal as many of those hurts before you start dating, before you get out into the dating world and start seriously looking for a relationship. It's easy to go out and date casually, and guys, we're more susceptible to it, that we get wrapped up. We date somebody a couple of times, we really like their company, yet we haven't healed, and we take all of our baggage, all of our garbage into that next relationship, and we end up hurting somebody that doesn't necessarily need to be hurt. So it just takes time. Now, I'm not saying that in your time of healing, in your time of recovery, that you shouldn't date. I think it's great to go out and have a good time with somebody, to have a companion once in a while, to go out to dinner with, or go to a movie with, or go dancing, as Paul suggests. And just somebody to enjoy an evening with, but it shouldn't be a long-term commitment. If you're not at a point in life where you can say to yourself, I'm comfortable with me, I'm happy with my own company, I don't need anyone, then and be actually honest about that. And doesn't mean you don't want someone in your life, but when you get to that point, it's an awesome point. It's an awesome stage of life to be in, because then you're in control. You are the master of your destiny at that point. You control. You're dating from a position of power. And when you're dating from a position of power, you can decide, yes, I want to date this person. No, I don't want to date that person. You know, it gives you incredible control over what happens. You know, as opposed to dating from a position of weakness, or being needy and just wanting somebody to be in your life. Or a lot of people say, "Oh, I just need to have somebody. I can't be alone." Well, that's because you haven't taken the time to grieve and recover from the loss of your last relationship or relationships. You know, if you're a serial monogamist, within a couple of weeks you're back in another relationship, and that is never healthy. And I've worked with several serial monogamists that it just drove them crazy to be alone. But it isn't until you can be alone with yourself and be comfortable with that. It may not be your favorite pastime, but you should be comfortable with your own company and say, yeah, if I find somebody, great. If not, I'm okay. You know, and that's a difficult place to get to. But when you get there, it's really nice. You just have to make sure that you don't settle there. And when I say settle there, I mean, it says, well, I guess it just isn't meant to be. So, and you give up dating, you give up looking. I just had a conversation with a woman last week about settling. She's been frustrated with dating, and she says, I've quit looking. Well, I had to remind her that if she's quit looking, she's making it just that much harder for her soulmate to find her. You both have to be active and looking. And Terry says, some people are expecting their new love to heal them. That's absolutely correct, and nobody can heal you. You have to do that work. Nobody can make you happy. The happiness has to come from inside. It's got to be inside you, and it's got to emanate from you. And until you're happy with you, all you're going to do is make somebody else miserable. And Paul says, part of the problem is our culture looks down on single people. Coupling is encouraged. Yes, it is. And sadly, sadly, we're in an immediate gratification society where we think everything has to be right now. And I'll point my finger all the way back to the 1950s when the first TV dinners came out. That was the first step, or the first move into immediate gratification. And look where we've progressed from there. Fast food. If it takes us 5 minutes to get a meal at McDonald's or Burger King or whatever it is, we're starting to hit the anger button. And it's just, and microwaves. When I tell people that I make killer popcorn, they say, "What do? You got something in the microwave?" No, I make it on the stove the old-fashioned way. It takes me 10 minutes. So if you want popcorn, if you want me to make you popcorn, you got to be willing to wait, because I make it the old-fashioned way. Hey, Jacqueline, thanks for joining in. I'm glad you're here. Awesome. And Paul says, Swanson chicken dinners. Yes, I've had. Back in the 60s, I had a lot of Swanson frozen dinners. And then you had to put them in the oven. It still took 20-25 minutes to bake those things. So it's, things have, while in some respects we think things have progressed, I still find a home cooked meal the best of all. But the point is that when you don't take time for yourself, when you don't when you try to rush things, it's it becomes damaging to future relationships. And there's no magic wand that I can wave over anybody. There's no magic potion or magic formula that I can give you to help you move ahead faster. You have to, and we all heal at different rates and at different times. Sometimes it just takes us longer to come to some realizations than others. So it's incumbent upon all of us to get ourselves into a position of being the best that we can be. And are you the person that you'd love to date? And if you're not, then what do you need to work on? Do you need to work on an attitude? Do you need to work on something physical? Do you need to work on something intellectually? What is it? What is it that would make you better? Are you continually striving to be better? Are you a student of lifelong learning? I think we all should be. We all should have at least a book a month. It could be learning about art. It can be learning about social events. It could be learning about self-help. It can be learning about a variety of things. It could be learning about investing. It can be what can you be learning to make you more attractive to the next person. But more importantly, what can you learn? What can you read? What hobby can you pick up that will make you a more attractive person? And awesome. Hang on one second. I'm going to share this. Terry says, I love learning. And that's what we all should. So many of us get out of high school or college and we think that's it. Man, that's just the beginning. If I had known back then what I know now, or how much that I was going to continue to learn, it would have blown my mind. But I try to get in at least one book a month, usually two. And it's always fascinating to pick up, and you don't have to memorize a book. You just have to other than math, I think I'm probably there with you. I can do some simple things, but you start getting into I got into college calculus and I was just so lost. That was just that was just a total waste of a semester. But it was what I needed and for the degree I got at the time, and Addie's back and she says, my brain is full. No more learning. Addie. Yeah, and she says, just kidding. Yeah. And I hope so. And you don't have to study things till your head explodes. But the idea is that you constantly keep learning. It's learning something new, picking up new ideas, learning new concepts, listening to other people, that disagree with you, sitting and talking to them and just getting their perspective on life. And it doesn't mean you need to start an argument but listen respectfully and say, oh, okay, I disagree with you, but I respect your opinion. And that's a great way to communicate with somebody. This is a good one. Terry says, learning new recipes. Absolutely. It makes you more creative in the kitchen, and it's always nice to be with someone that can cook an interesting meal, and I say an interesting meal because I'm a very, and I just use myself as an example. I have a very simple palate, but it's always fun to try some new things. Yeah, with exceptions, snails and oh, what is it? Sushi. They're just off the table for me. Raw fish. Nope, I'm out. So, but but I digress. So so there's an evolution process. Don't become that person that somebody falls in love with of the person you could be. Continue evolving and becoming that person that they know you can be, or become the best person that you can be, and do that for yourself. Don't do it for anyone else. If somebody else doesn't like it, okay, that's on them. But always become the best person that you can, and always do your best every day. Some days are better than others, I'll admit. Sometimes you just look at the world and say, or at least I do, and sometimes I say it's too peoply out there, I don't want to deal with any of it. And then other days, I'm right in the middle of it. So it's, we all have our special times. And so, anyway, let's see. Addie says, raw fish is yummy. Escargot. Yeah, no. I have a very simple palate, Addie, and that's not on it. And Paul says, a good cook is an attractive trait in a mate. My mom and late wife were great cooks. Awesome. Yeah, my mom was an okay cook, and maybe that's why I only have a very subdued palate, or very very limited palate in what I enjoy. And but that is very attractive. And what really amazes me with somebody that can cook well, it takes it takes so little time to put a good meal together. But if I'm doing it on my own, it seems like it just takes forever. Does anybody else ever notice that? I just and it probably doesn't take me any longer than it takes anybody else to cook something. But when I'm doing it on my own, it just seems like it takes forever to put it all together. And so I generally don't attempt some of the fancier dishes I could, because they're too time consuming. But I've been around people that just can whip things up and say, "Oh, look, hey, it's like a 4-course meal." How'd you do that? Oh, it's just easy. And for some people, that's very easy. And that's that's another thing. Cooking for yourself, cooking as a single, I find, me personally, I find is drudgery isn't exactly the word, but it's not my favorite pastime. And Addie says, yes, takes me forever. Yeah, we're on the same page there, Addie. And Paul says, healthy cooking takes longer. Dislike the microwave. Yeah, I generally try not to cook in a microwave either, Paul. There are some things, now if I've got leftovers, yeah, it's great for most leftovers. Although, I find that some things it changes the taste on, and not necessarily for the better. But you're right. Cooking on the stove is far better than microwave. Just ask about my popcorn. Ha! Ha! And so that's always better than microwave popcorn. So anyway, let's see where we are time wise. Now we still have a few minutes left. If you want to keep going, let's. I'm kind of rambling on here. Does anybody have any questions? And we'll try to answer those, and we'll just keep rocking and rolling for a few more minutes here. It's and discovering that you're dating somebody that's stuck in the past, or that or that you're in love with who they could be. You see all kinds of potential for them. They talk a good story, but they don't take action on what they talk about, or they don't stick with it. They get started on something and then quickly give up because it's not producing results fast enough. Sometimes those things take a little time to sort out. So you have to pay particular attention when somebody tells you they have big goals. Well, how are those goals coming? How are they, what are their grand desires, and what are they doing to work towards those grand desires? What are they doing to do that? Or is it just talk? Are they wishing they'd be farther ahead than they are? Are they doing anything to achieve their goals? These are all things that you need to observe and have conversations about. When they tell you what their goals are, say, how is that coming? How far have you progressed? That's a great goal. I'd love to help you with it. What do you need? What needs to be done to get you where you want to go? And so you can be an encourager. As all healthy relationships, you need to be able to encourage each other in their most passionate dreams, their most passionate desires, and be an encourager to help them move forward. And they should do the same thing for you. And Addie says, yes, they are great at talking, but no follow through. And when you start to see people, start to see them as all talk and no action, and then it's time to start questioning whether that's somebody that's right for you. Maybe they have some truly grand goals or desires, but have no clue on how to get there. Can you help them? Can you help sort them out? Or are they just talking? Is it just lip service and saying, oh yeah, I'd love to, because, we all have met people say, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. But when it comes right down to it, they don't want to put in the effort. They don't want to, they're comfortable in the status quo, and that's okay. But then don't expect grand things from them. If the status quo is okay, and don't misunderstand me, status quo can be very comfortable. It can be very attractive, and I'm not going to dissuade anybody from being comfortable. But sometimes the best experiences in life come from being uncomfortable, from getting uncomfortable and getting outside your comfort zone. Right, Terry? Terry knows what I'm talking about. Addie knows what I'm talking. Paul knows what I'm talking about. And Terry says, "Oh, I know those no effort people." And yeah, and we all do. And that's we all have to pay. That's what we have to pay attention to. Are they no effort people? Do they put effort into the relationship? Do they put effort into being the best they can be for you? Or are they just sliding along and letting you do all the work in the relationship? And that's not an extraordinary relationship either. Addie says, yep, lived and learned. I was always encouraging, but I got tired. There was no point. And that's right. You have to recognize that at some point, everything you're saying is falling on deaf ears. And that's a saying my father used to use. It's falling on deaf ears. And so, it's when you start recognizing that, and all of these things that I'm sharing with you are designed to help you move forward more quickly. To help you recognize either this is a good relationship or it's not. If it's not, then let's bail and let's go find one that is, and keep looking until we find that extraordinary relationship. It's the saddest thing I see or the saddest people I deal with are those that spent way too much time in the wrong relationship. Now, I'm not talking if you're married, you have to put extra effort into a relationship when you're married. But when you're dating somebody in a romantic relationship, the saddest thing I see is when people recognize, yeah, this isn't the right relationship, but I've been here 5 years. Then I will have wasted 5 years. Well, no, the only wasted time is the time that you spent from the time you recognized that it was the wrong relationship. Whether that's a year, 2 years, 3 years in, the first 2 or 3 years were great, and then something changed. You only wasted 5 years if you recognized early on that this relationship wasn't an ideal relationship right from the get go. So and learn from it. Don't beat yourself up. When it's time to leave, it's time to leave. And I know it. I make it sound easy. It is not. It is never easy to leave. It's always easier to stay. The pain of staying is far less than the pain of leaving. But the pain of staying is permanent, where the pain of leaving is temporary. So we all have to be aware that everything that we do has consequences. The longer we stay, the harder it gets to leave emotionally, because we keep developing attachments. As mediocre as those attachments might be, then it still makes it tougher to leave. And Nancy says, that's me, spending too much time with the wrong relationship. Wish I could just let it go. And Nancy, you just have to make that decision. And that's why you learned about the must-have and deal-breaker lists, so that you can recognize quickly when a relationship has great potential and when it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you use those lists to say, okay, does he have all of the things on my must-have, or am I seeing any red flags? Those are your boundaries, and those are the boundaries that you need to set, and you need to keep those boundaries. Then there are other things that can cause a relationship to fail. It can be a lack of chemistry. It can be a lack of connection. It can be a lack of lack of the intellectual connection, or a lack of a spiritual connection, or an emotional connection. There could be any number of things. But it's something that you have to evaluate and use the tools that you've acquired over the last 8 weeks, and use that to help guide you. And you may make mistakes along the way, Nancy. You may let somebody go too early. But odds are you won't. Odds are that when you feel that it's time, that this isn't going to be the right relationship. And this was another thing that I've come across, and it's just stood out to me, is that ladies, you want to give 110% to a relationship you already know is the wrong relationship. You already know that it's not what you're looking for, but you keep waiting, you keep hoping, you keep nudging your partner to make some changes, or to be different, or to magically become the person you imagine them to be, or the person that you hope that they can be. And the odds are it's just not going to happen, and like 99.999%, it's not going to happen. And when you start to recognize, no, this just isn't feeling right, that's the time to exit. And again, I know it's so much easier for me to say than it is to do, but it's like anything. The more often you do it, the more often you exercise that muscle, that leaving muscle, the easier it gets for you. And it will never truly be easy, but you'll recognize that it has to be done, and it will be much more comfortable as you move forward. Let's see what we got here. Paul says the emotional connection is tough. It absolutely is, and that's what keeps us connected to the wrong relationships. But when you use your must-have and deal-breaker lists, especially, that can help you step back out of that emotional connection. It can still help you step out of the infatuation and the raging hormones that go along with it too. That help you recognize what's healthy and what's not. And Nancy, I know you're trying, and it just takes time. It just takes time. So with that, we're at the top of the hour already. And so if anybody has any burning questions right now, we'll answer those real quick. Otherwise, let's wrap up today, and I'll wait here for a second and see if anybody's typing. And in the meantime, I hope you guys all have an awesome week. And Teresa, you were quiet today. Where you been? And maybe she checked in earlier and didn't get reconnected. So anyway, well, I hope you guys have a great week and a phenomenal weekend coming up. And I will see you all next Monday on Monday Mastery, and we'll be live at 6 o'clock Central and whatever other time, Eastern, Mountain, and Pacific time. Have a great week. I love you guys. Thanks for being here.